Good? Okay.
We'll begin. Yeah.
I'll call this meeting to order. Shall we do the pledge?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, I think we should.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
No counselors from Hamden here?
Roll call, please, Twyla.
Council Garrison.
Present.
Council Lunt.
Here.
Council McTevier.
Here.
Council Bickford.
Here.
Council Ward.
Here.
Council Pesky will be here shortly. Council Brunel.
Here.
Thank you. And the first item, Twyla?
Order 2014-35 to go into executive session per 1 MRSA Section 405 6A Personnel Matters.
Do I have a motion
I'll make that motion.
and a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Order passed 5-0. 6-0.
I think we'll just go into the next room for a
You want to do that?
few minutes, and we can probably turn the camera off and then turn it back on.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay? And, Mr. Warren, we may have some questions for you, if you could just hang tight. Thank you.
Lisa, do you want me in
Yes,
there?
please.
How do?
I'll do.
I get out my key? Aye.
Thank you, Twyla. So again, thank you for your patience. We apologize for the delay. We had serious discussion, and the chair is open for a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to remove Steve Warren from the Trails Committee.
Second that.
This motion requires what is referred to as a supermajority. At least 5 counselors need to agree. I don't think we need any discussion. We've already had it. All those in favor?
Do a roll call vote.
Sure. We will,
Councilor Bickford.
Yes.
Councilor Brunel.
Yes.
Councilor Garrison.
Yes.
Councilor Lunt.
Yes.
Councilor Mativier.
Yes.
Councilor Pesky.
No.
Councilor Ward.
yes.
6 yeas and 1 nay. Order passed.
In brief explanation, because we do need to move forward, we appreciated Mr. Warren's willingness to discuss with us this matter, and we still appreciate his hard work, his good ideas, his excellent ideas. We hope that Mr. Warren remains active in the community, and I think that that's all we need to say. But we did make this decision with much difficulty, and Mr. Warren, we do appreciate everything that you have done for us. We'll now move into the workshop agenda.
Do you want a motion to adjourn to the workshop?
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn to workshop?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
And the first item, please, Twyla.
Is the department head budget presentations, the library department.
Okay.
You ready?
There you are.
Different ends this time.
Point the microphone toward you, because we had people who said they wanted to be able to hear better. Okay.
Yeah, Diane will not be joining us tonight, so I will be filling in for her.
Well, we all know how dedicated she is, so.
Absolutely.
She would much rather be here than where she is.
Yes. Are we ready? Okay. The library has a total maintenance budget of $168,700. That's a decrease to the current budget of $1,436. and that is due to some staffing budgetary changes as well as the 2% COLA increase. 77% of the 168 is related to personnel costs, and the programming supplies make up the additional 33,750. For budget options within the library department, we'd be looking to do the annual fundraiser letter that would go out on behalf of the departments. We'd be looking potentially, up for discussion is to offer resident user fees to the communities of Durham and Sabattis. Diane has a request, or the library department has a request for a depressible book return cart to the tune of $440 that she would like added to the budget, which would help prevent damage to the books when they're returned in the off hours. So rather than dropping through the slot and falling into like a milk crate, I believe is currently what it is, and which can damage the bindings and stuff and to the books, they would prefer to put in a depressible book cart, which I guess just gently lowers or absorbs the impact for the book. She would also be looking at an increase of $1,287 or thereabouts for a mobile wood or steel shelving unit to for increased storage with books.
Probably in there.
They're in there, but I can give you. I just don't have an extra one. Okay. Within your packet, after the presentation slides, you'll also find some notes from Diane in regards to the additional revenue sources. Since we've been trying to, as a town as a whole, look at additional sources of revenue, Diane's recommending that we review the non-resident yearly fees that are currently being charged. As it stands right now, it's at $40 per year per family. Based on surrounding communities, it wouldn't be unreasonable to ask for that request to move to $50 for a yearly non-resident family membership. If that is, in addition to that, if that's not a jump you're willing to make, another option could be to move to a quarterly, or to offer quarterly or half-year memberships for non-residents, as some people, not so much that we have summer resident only, or, we're not that type of tourist destination, but there are people that only come here for short periods of time and might like to use our library at a fee-based rate versus not.
Jessica, do you by any chance know when the last time we raised that rate was?
The governing board reviews it every couple of years, but I'm not positive when the last rate increase was. I don't think there's been one since I've been here. It's been quite a while.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Okay.
it's been 40 since I've been here, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Diane also included some circulation and patron stats for your enjoyment, so you can see what their numbers look like. And she also included a blurb on the recommendation and discussion on possibly changing the library hours to coincide with the town, should that move be something council wishes to pursue, wishes to pursue.
So the days that they're open would be longer hours, like the proposed town office hours?
Correct. Excuse me.
I can't say I'm happy with losing Friday. I think a lot of people go in there on Friday at the end of the week. That's the only time they have off. I mean, I think it would make more sense to me to lose Monday out of the schedule, and that way you'd have 3 days, because they're open Saturday now, and if you're gonna have to let the heat go down and then heat it back up again in the winter and then cool it down, you're not saving as much as you could if you're gonna have, a 3-day weekend. I think it'll be easier to schedule, and you'd save more money in the winter and heating, cooling in the summer.
And I think she kind of refers to that. She has listed closed Friday, but in parentheses, you'll notice that it says like the town office, so that it stays on the same schedule with whatever's deemed for the town office.
I think you need to look at individually what the service provides to
And
the
that-
users.
yeah,
and not
that
just,
could be an
take a
option as
one-size
well.
fits all.
Yep.
That should be, that's a different.
It's what I've heard, they have more usage on Friday than on Monday, so
Yeah,
Monday's the weaker day, and if you have
They-
to close one,
They keep track of all their traffic, they
do.
could tell us. Mhm.
yes.
counters on the doors.
I had the opportunity to have a brief discussion with Diane about this topic, and she was, sounded very positive about the idea of having longer days with more staff. It would actually be more beneficial to patrons. So I think whatever we would decide on library hours, but the library staff and Diane would be 100% behind it, but
Yeah, I agree with Mark. She should run that through as far as what her stats are, whatever's better for her and her patrons.
Yep.
I mean, it might even come down to the fact where it's better for her to stay open all those days rather than cut back.
so she has that on the last page of this.
Probably,
Library Department, Monday and Friday patron and circulation stats.
yeah,
And Friday does look like a much busier day.
yeah.
I mean, there are pros and cons to both. There are a lot of Monday holidays.
True.
But Friday's a higher traffic rate for the library. So that's definitely something I think we need to think a little more closely.
True, but if they close on Monday, it gives their workers 2 days off rather than just 1 day, 1 day. Anyway.
It's easier to schedule real,
Yeah.
Yeah, real,
as I know, I've worked every
real
day.
vacations.
Right, you get Tuesday off and Friday off and work all the other days, and it's like, you can't do anything on your weekend. You
Yeah.
Right.
split up days, it's good.
But again, that should be driven by her customer base, what she believes is best for the customer.
Dale, did you have an opportunity to talk with Diane about the operating hours and what, did you get a,
She gave me
More
the
of a
same
feel?
information that you have
Yeah,
before you this
okay.
evening, and I know the board, I believe, actually voted to, if the hours are going to change, to be closed on Fridays, correct, and not Mondays? Or was it the reverse? To be closed Mondays, not Fridays? Because it would be pretty much the opposite of what town, when we report to you at your next meeting, it's going to be actually the opposite result here. Our survey, which the last time I looked was over 400 strong,
It is.
people that have either logged on or voted here or stated a preference. It looks like the preferred day or the slowest day for us would be Friday. And I think almost 80% of those responding indicated an interest in having longer days and fewer days. The public seems to really like the idea of being able to stop in before and after work to do business.
okay, so can we pass on the possibility of Mondays instead of Fridays if we move forward with reduced hours?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jessica, do we know how many people from outside the town have a membership? Do we have numbers on that?
I did. Bear with me. I want to say it's around 250, between 250, 300 memberships.
That's sizable.
Yeah, that makes sense of the math there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a lot of questions because Diane keeps a pretty tight budget, and the library board runs a pretty tight ship over there, and
I would encourage the addition of the depressible book cart. Diane does not ask for a lot, and for that to be $440, it's not going to change your mill rate drastically.
For sure, for sure.
I wouldn't be opposed to adding that.
Well, if she just ups her rate, wouldn't that probably cover it
It would
anyway?
more
But-
than, it would more than
Well,
cover
that'd be all set anyway, so,
probably both her items.
right, so.
And what about the mobile wood
Shelving.
steel shelving units? What does she want that for?
I did have this conversation with her, and I believe in the children's room, that's right, it would
Oh,
allow,
yeah.
I'm sorry. It would be used in the children's room for, I believe it would allow for more books and greater access based on what's there currently.
It's already getting pretty tight in there.
Yes.
It's pretty crowded.
So if we upped her rate, that'll cover both those items pretty easily.
Yeah, it would be close, it would be
Yeah.
a minimal
Yeah.
impact.
That's
Plus,
the way
you
to
would
go.
have savings on the repairs to the books with a depressible book cart versus dropping them in
I would say,
a milk crate.
I would say do it.
Yeah, I'd say do both of them.
If we add both of those to the budget, and there's an increase in revenues due to the
Membership.
the membership fees, right?
There'll be some reduced wages because of the, change in hours.
Right.
That would save more than the cost of those two.
And I understand she's on track, thinking up ideas for a fundraiser.
Yeah, well, and this is in regards to the letter that's being proposed to send out on behalf of the departments.
Gotcha.
The fire, library, and rec, was it?
Yeah,
I believe,
yeah.
yeah, so this would be just the general letter that goes out and says, would you like to donate to one of these services? So, in some capacity.
One or all.
Right. One or all.
Okay. I tried to take notes
Plus
to
there's a
ask
decrease
questions, but
anyway.
What's that?
Plus there's a decrease in her budget anyway.
Right,
so.
that primarily offsets what she's
Yeah.
asking.
All right.
Any other questions or comments or suggestions from council? Well, we missed seeing Diane, but I think we can move on. The next item, Twyla.
Is the police department budget presentation?
Honored guest.
Well, while David's coming up, I can take you through the sheet, the presentation slide for the police department. We were looking, there's a total maintenance budget of $996,679. That's a decrease over the current budget of $2,221. That's due to staffing changes and 2% COLA, offset by the 2% COLA increase. 89% of the 996 is personnel costs. Fuel contributes $36,170, and we are currently committed to lease purchases in the amount of $28,700. Budget options that we're looking at is the cruiser replacement program at a cost between $10,000 and $12,000. Looking at a replacement for Unit 3 and Unit 2, and it's a range of 10 to 12 based on whether we go with a 4 or 5 year lease. We'd be looking to obtain a document imaging unit to electronically store records and reducing file space that we no longer have available. And with a 5-year lease, that would be an annual cost of $2,800. We are looking at a voter radio system, which is a annual cost of $5,200 over a 5-year lease. and mobile radios at a cost of $6,600, again, over a 5-year lease.
Dylan, can you take, sure, thank you. I'll be right back.
Can either the chief or you explain what a voter radio
I was
system
just
is?
gonna ask that.
I will defer to Chief.
Voter radio system is essentially a mini repeater. We already have a primary repeater unit, and in the progression of improving our townwide radio system in public safety, both police and fire, they call it a voter. I don't know why they tagged it that name, but that's the name they gave it. It's a mini repeater, and you essentially put it in a geographic area of town where you're having poor radio reception and transmission. Our primary target, both PD and fire right now, is to address the Falls area, the downtown Falls area. My biggest concern with the Falls is portable radio traffic out of the high school and middle school. So we want to put a voter system in that general area of the Falls. And what a voter system does is when you key the mic, basically your transmission goes to the, they say that, they explain it as the strongest location, either the voter or the repeater, and then one or the other transmits that back to this tower here. That's all done in milliseconds, but the technology allows it to happen. Right now, we have the repeater up on Route 9. That's improved us tenfold as far as both PD and fire on communications, but we still have handheld mobile radio issues in parts of town that are problematic, and I want to make sure that the first area we address is our schools. And if I got an SRO in the school that needs something quickly and she can't get to a phone, she has her radio, and I just want to make sure that that works properly.
And this is a public safety item, so you'll see an equivalent charge under fire as well, because it serves both fire and police.
So is that 5,200, is that broke up between fire and police, or is it
It's
5,200 to get
for
all
both.
together?
In each department. It's split between the
So
two
it's
departments.
10,000.
Yep,
So it's half.
yep.
Okay.
Chief, do you have an idea where,
I'm sorry?
do you have an idea of where you need to put the repeater or how high it has to be?
I'm not that familiar with the requirements on that. It's not a full-fledged tower. It's nothing more than an antenna on a structure someplace that's already existing. It's not going to be an additional tower. And again, this is here. This is one of those items that if we knew that there was a grant available tomorrow, we'd be on top of it to try to get grant money. But our problem now with Homeland Security grants is they're getting smaller and smaller. And for example, our Homeland Security grant this past year, I think, was $1,600 max. So it makes it difficult to go for these items now. And that's the same with mobile radios and
Is that replacing the radios that you already have?
I'm sorry?
Is that to replace radios that you already have, or is this
Yeah, our
additional?
mobile radios. This isn't, again, we're all learning this budget idea here on maintenance and options, and this piece here is it's on the radar for you now. You've seen it. Matter of fact, I think they saw it in past capitals.
Yes.
It's on the radar. We're going to have to address it at some point in time down the, if not, probably not this coming year, but sometime thereafter, we are going to have to address our mobile radios. So, and again, it's one of those items that if we're fortunate enough to come up with a Homeland Security grant or some other type of grant that I can address it with, our history, and that's what we'll do. We'll go after it through grant work, but again, there's no guarantees with that. So this is a capital need. It's a capital need. It's not immediate. It's down the road, so that's why it's there. So you'll see it again. Again, the process, I don't know if they saw the capital.
It was in this past capital budget as
Okay.
well as last year,
Yeah,
I believe
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Can any of these items be bought with the forfeiture money, or?
Forfeiture money can be used to purchase items that supplement the budget. So, bottom answer to that is they could be. I guess that, you know, the debate, and the debate goes on to then how you want to use the forfeiture account. I had, when Chief Gallup and I first started talking about the voter system, and in talking with that, the thought process at that time was if the town, you folks would, let me take a step backwards. We don't want to do the voter system unless it's both PD and fire. That's key. We want to make sure that if we're going to put the equipment in the area, that it takes care of both agencies. Don't want to just do one and not do the other. Our repeater on the Hill does both. We want to make sure everything is both. So part of that voter cost could be funded through forfeiture, but we can't fund the fire portion.
Right, for the fire department, we wouldn't cover
Through
that.
them,
Correct.
things like that. And that's why we have these discussions.
If we covered the fire department, and you could use forfeiture money to cover your side.
Yes.
That's an option.
Pardon?
He likes that.
For the voter, is how you say it, voter? Is that right terminology? Okay.
Yeah, I thought the town clerk had something to do with it when I first saw it, but
I did notice on the PD side, it has a 5-year lease purchase. And then on the fire, it doesn't have a 5-year lease. Now, is this,
It does, it does. I just didn't get to the point where I could put all the
Oh,
disclosure. Those
okay.
were more talking points as I went through.
Okay.
So
So-
there is a 5-year lease on that as well.
so if we did this voter system, $10,000 be for this year, $10,000 for next 5
Correct.
years. So we're looking at $50,000 overall.
Correct.
Okay.
and right now, that's a rough estimate, because we haven't gotten anything firm from radio companies yet. We've talked to them, and you know, they've given us approximates, but it's like everything we do with this, we have to set them down and really start nitpicking to get some firm figures.
For the cruiser replacement program, looking through the budget, I always have a hard time understanding the car situation when I look at the budget. So the budget presented in this book here, we don't have any money budgeted for new cars, is that correct?
No, what you have in the books is strictly maintenance for what we currently have in service,
So this is just to pay our lease?
what we're currently obligated to.
Okay, so there's no new cars in the
There's nothing new
I always
in
I
the
always get
budget.
confused when I look at the lease purchase agreements and I look at the motor vehicle line. I always get them
Yeah, I'm
confused.
working with Chief to try to consistently keep those separated, and it was trying to deal with that 6-year lease and where that was coded versus,
Yeah.
so we're trying to clean those up so that they are, the motor vehicle one is gonna be the vehicles, and the lease purchase is gonna be everything else.
But last year, this time, council did ask for a capital
I think that was me that asked you for that.
Council.
Just saying, put it out there.
Did you have
They
these?
have it,
They
yep,
have it.
they have it
Okay,
in
I
their
didn't know
packet.
that.
Yep.
Good. Then you have it.
I need to read it now.
And if you would look at the, there's 2 options there, and I guess my stronger suggestion is the 5-6 option. We've already got history that seems to indicate that we can make these primary units go out that long. But it's key to know that you can keep asking for this information and we can keep piecemealing this, but nothing's ever going to get, did they get the second
Schedules, yeah,
part of that too?
they did.
Okay, I didn't see it, that's why I was wondering. If you look at the bottom figure there, In order to start building a stable amount year after year, we have to start doing this now.
Right.
And then you'll be able to plan out on your budgets at a certain fiscal year and know exactly what you're gonna be needing in your account year after year. It's gonna be the same amount. If there is any fluctuation in it, it would be cost and interest, I guess, nothing more than that. So, and that has been the concern, at least that was the concern I heard last year, is that there didn't seem to be any set plan, fixed plan, so that you could plan on budgeting down the road.
On these schedules within your packets, the bottom three amounts for FY15, the 6,100, 7,100, and the 6,000, those are what's currently in the maintenance budget. Oh, and looking at it, Unit 1 is as well, because that's a 14. So you'd be looking at adding Unit 2 and 3.
Shows up better on my color.
Yeah.
Go for it, I have enough.
Rest them out, that's why.
It's easier to see with color.
If I'm not mistaken, Unit 3 is the one that we replaced the motor on last year at this time?
How are all the vehicles doing?
I'm sorry?
How are they all doing right now?
They're running. They're running.
How would the new Explorers do? They,
So far, so good. It's really still too early because they've got, I've got some note here someplace. One has just under 20,000, the other one has, I forgot now, 25,000, 27,000. So they've still got a ways to go before we really experience what's going on with them. But to date, they're okay. Oh, no.
So when you look at those schedules, basically what's being recommended is we incorporate this year Units 2 and 3 into the budget. And what that will allow is for you to maintain over the next fiscal years the lease payment for the rest of the fleet. Because you currently have a payment in the existing maintenance budget for Units 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? So if you're willing to fund Units 2 and 3, it will allow us to maintain, like we do for the fire department truck replacement program, it will allow us to maintain a flat budget going forward to use that current lease payment. There will be some adjustments, mind you, because currently Units 5, 6, and 7 are under one lease. And it was a 6-year one, so that's a very deflated price of what it would be to maintain a capital plan, cruiser replacement plan. But this is helping to lay the foundation where we can keep these capital lines flat, or over the next couple of years increase it minimally to allow for a rotating schedule that Chief and I have been working on in order to maintain the fleet.
If you have the colored, pass that one out there. If you have the one that's in color, where the blue numbers are the replacement year.
Can look at his.
Replacement vehicles those years. So you see where the
Where they fall in replacement.
rolling into what gets replaced over time.
Chief, what's the average lifespan of a cruiser? You said
That
6
depends
years?
on the length of the lease right now.
Oh, okay. Well, all right.
We have,
Let's forget the lease.
we've gone 5 to 6 years now.
And mileage, 110, 120?
The last ones we put in were in the 120s.
Okay. That's pretty standard.
And 3 right now is at 107, 108 in there someplace.
I must admit, in going through this lease purchase program is totally foreign to me. I've not had any experience with lease purchase, and I really think lease is not the correct word. It should be loan purchase, because what you're doing is you're borrowing the money over a 5 or 6 year period from a bank, which is a loan, and then repaying the bank over that period of time for the loan. So the word lease threw me a bit, but I'm looking deeper into this and better understanding how you do this. But in my 36 years in this business, I never dealt with any lease purchase or loan purchase. So this is a learning experience for me.
On a lease, is this like a typical lease? At the end of the lease, you turn the vehicle back in?
No, you aren't.
End of the lease. That's why it's called a lease purchase. That's why I call it a lease purchase. I don't know what the bank calls it anymore.
That's what it is listed on the bank forms. That's
Yeah.
why the language for us has
Lease
been lease
purchase.
purchase. Yeah, but it's similar to what Dale just said, where we get a loan and it's ours at the end.
It's not a lease, it's a loan.
Right, but all the banking forms and information that we get call them lease purchases. So that's where that terminology comes from.
I think we had some
Council here went to
confusion
that
last
years
year.
and years ago, I don't even know how many years ago now, went to that because they wanted to be able to get into basically a budget that they could project out over time, year after year, and know what the cost was gonna be, instead of having, $25,000 in one year and $50,000 in another year, and back to 25, things like that. So that's why they went to the lease purchase idea.
Now, Unit 5's an 08. How many miles are on that vehicle right now?
They're all in the 90s. The 08 is, but that's not, Unit 5 is not on the replacement plan for this fiscal year. Unit 5 is the one.
How many more years do you figure you'll run something like that? Greg's always doing that.
Let's try that again.
My apologies for interrupting you.
How many years, how much longer is the lifespan of that? It's an 08 now. What's the lifespan of that vehicle? How many more years you figure you'd be using that one?
It's going to be on mileage, not on years. It'll be on mileage. So that's that car got hit in the 6 or 7 year lease, and that's why it's been unmarked its entire life here. I could never mark that car. I could never put that car into rotation. And that's the key with these plans, is that we rotate vehicles from primary, from 24-hour car, 20-hour vehicle, 16-hour vehicle, 8-hour vehicle, whatever. We continually rotate them to try to keep the mileage close.
Right.
But when you start skipping years, or you start putting cars on 6-year leases and you can't put it into patrol full-time because you have to save the car for 6 years, so you have to give it a different assignment, it makes it difficult to rotate your primary units and try to keep the mileage standard
So
amongst them all.
what do you generally get for mileage? When you say the car is finished, what's the mileage?
We're trading them in, right now, historically, we're trading them in the 120,000 mile range.
That's low miles.
Well, some people think it is, but it's a
the
police
20,
car.
Yeah.
My
think
car's
it's
got
more-
191,
Car.
still
It's
goes
not,
good.
it's, your car's not a police car, and we go through this year after year.
There is differences.
Yeah.
I know.
What do you do with you trade the vehicles in?
And they're traded in, yeah.
There are companies in New Jersey, New York that will buy them. They love Crown Vics.
Mhm.
And they will paint them repair them to some extent, and they'll use them for two purposes. One, for movie cars, and typically they crash them in movies, or two, taxis in New York, New Jersey. But when I was in Freeport, we went from trading them in and getting 1,000 to 2,000 to, we developed a network of 6 or 8 dealers in New York, New Jersey, and they now sell them, and they get anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 apiece for them. And they'll come here and pick them up, and so just food for thought. You might be able to increase your revenue from your trade-ins.
Do you know what they generally give you on a trade-in?
It's
Ballpark.
anywhere from 15 to 2,000. Yeah. That way
Could
for,
sell them outright and probably do well.
Well, if you put them in the local paper, no.
no.
But there are sort of specialty markets for, now that they're getting away from Crown Vics, I'm not sure how those markets will view police cruisers, but they just love the Crown Vics. Look at any movie, New York related, you're gonna see Crown Vics everywhere, and they're basically used municipal vehicles.
How many Crown Vics do we have left in the fleet?
3.
3. Which ones are Crown Vics in here?
5, 6, and 7.
5.
Which I'm assuming you're going to the Explorers once those are going.
I'm sorry?
You're gonna go to the Explorers once those are.
That's my plan. Yeah. Yeah. The Crown Vics are 2, 3, and 5.
What are 6 and 7?
Those are Fusions.
Chief, could you do us up a list like you gave us last year?
I'm sorry, what's that?
You gave us this list last year with mileage and all that.
You want a mileage list, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you gave us one last year,
Okay.
budget time,
All right.
listing all the vehicles, their year,
Uh-huh.
mileage. That would help. That's fair enough.
Could we move on to the image,
That was my next question, too.
the document image?
We've asked about, we've seen this on the budget before, and I think we should be clear on what it is and why we need it. And
Well, document imaging system is basically a copier computer software that scans everything that it copies and puts it into a computer-based network. And,
So it digitizes your physical records.
I'm sorry?
It changes your physical records
Yeah.
into
And the
digital
other-
records.
And at the same time, we can also use it to scan all of our current records and put it into this same software system. The problem that the PD, it came up last year in discussion, and there was confusion last year. I thought things happened that didn't happen, but anyway, as you all know, there's absolutely no storage in this building. None. And even though we're in the computer age, there's still a lot of paper being generated, way too much paper, and we're just running out of places to put it. This trailer we have out back here, we've got cold storage in that right now for storing paperwork. But we have to have the ability to quickly get to it as well, so that's becoming a problem. I brought it up recently, and the town clerk, she was all over it as well, as far as same need in her department for document imaging. So I don't know if it's this coming fiscal year or if it's partway through the fiscal year, but sometime in the very near future, we're going to have to get real serious about document imaging and get something down on this. I don't have all the answers for it right now. And
We
like
have
I said, last year we were strictly PD. PD had a need. We still have the need, but the need is beyond PD. The need is also in other departments within the building. So we got to come up with some type of plan on this.
Can you guys share one unit?
In all honesty, I don't have an answer for that.
It's probably a database that his part's confidential, ours part's some confidential, some not. Regardless of whether we can share it, I totally support at least beginning the process and doing one department, see how it goes. So,
Would that be because you want his cold storage?
George.
Now, I'm assuming since this was on last year's budget and got cut, then that would not be a, shall we say, a prime opportunity for using forfeiture funds.
You know, you can throw that out constantly, but I guess at some point in time,
Well, I know if it was on the budget, you can't, I believe that's the way it works. is if it
well,
was
you
something else,
can't supplant,
Supplant, exactly.
right?
If we said no,
can't
you can't go
supplant.
back and turn around and do that.
And I guess that could be an argument,
That's my only concern.
Yeah.
is they come back
yeah.
late.
And anyway,
I think it's more like though, something if you were spending year to year.
Yeah, I'm not
something
sure.
Just cut the spending and then use the
That would be my
funds
only
wouldn't work.
concern.
But I mean, I think if you turned it down, you'd still be able to say, okay, now we have the money, now we can do it. I wouldn't think that would
I don't know.
impact it, but yes, attorney.
Yeah, that would be something to look into. But anyway.
and again, we don't have all the answers on this, and I'm not comfortable with that number that's in there right now either. The company that was talking to us about this sent us some paperwork a while back, and the number had changed, and I didn't even get into it with them because the whole concept was changing too, so I didn't know if we were talking about a larger system or individual systems. We don't have all the answers, but again, this is on the radar. If it doesn't happen this year, it's on the radar. It will be. It's something at some point in time in the very near future has got to be addressed with this, not just PD, but other departments. And I was very pleased when the manager at the last department head meeting tasked the town clerk to look into it more. I thought that was pretty cool.
So at some point in time, we will have to budget it, because we won't have
Well,
any
at some
more
point,
room to put
something will
stuff.
have to be addressed
Yeah.
on dealing with the paper that's in this building and the records that have to be maintained and kept for life that was part, some of them.
Absolutely.
We got rid of the salt budget, we could buy 2 of the copies.
Don't get me started.
That's
Well, the copier, part of that too, and it is, it's a copier, it's software, it's X, Y, and Z. And an important piece on the PD side is that our copier that we're operating with right now is 12 years old over there. And of course, she probably wondered why I had an awful funny look on my face when Jessica was over there last week using it, because this one broke down and she's over there running off I don't know how many hundreds of copies off it. I'm like, oh, please don't go. But,
I was saying the same thing.
The photocopier at Town Hall is 6 years old, with almost 2 million copies. In a normal replacement schedule, you'd replace your copier at probably 5 years and 1 million copies. Now, the copier in this building was down 2 of 5 days last week.
yeah, and they were using
And more
PD.
over a 2-week period.
Yeah, and that's becoming more commonplace. So
Yeah.
people are running to the PD to copy, or waiting until the next day to copy, or, so,
Ours was manufactured, I looked at the date today, I pulled it out to try to find the date. Ours was manufactured in April of '02.
School doesn't
Oh,
have
it's
one they
an
can give
anchor.
us, do they?
no, I mean, your copiers ought to be on a 5-year replacement schedule. You don't wait until they become unusable. And,
When we're down
I
and
mean,
out,
a
it's hard.
copier is a primary tool in a
It
building
is.
like this.
Have we looked at copier rentals or leases that aren't purchasing agreements?
I haven't pursued anything with this copier just started going down over the last couple weeks, and I have not had a chance to look into it yet.
I know a lot of larger companies use, like the company I work for, we use, everything is leased. Our copiers, our fax machines, everything is leased. And since we have, the lease agreement combines a service agreement, it's all one agreement, and everything's taken care of all the time. Now, I don't know whether that's the best option for us, but it might be something that's worth looking into. especially if we have two old ones.
Again, it's on the radar.
Any other questions, or anything else you wanted to add, Chief?
Well, all of you know that the cruiser plan is pretty close to us, and we'd really like to get this resolved and on a workable schedule so we can count on it to be something that we can plan for year after year and not have to replace motors or whatever down the road, or transmissions 2 years ago when we replaced 2 transmissions and things like that. We just want to get back into.
Right, it's more sustainable, in my opinion.
That document imaging unit you're just talking about, what is this it's already in on line 5500 on here? Is that already budgeted into
No, it's
the-
not already budgeted. That's a missed comment that should have been striked, because that was part of last year's initial presentation. that
Okay,
was
I
cut
just
out.
happened to
Yeah.
see it in there. It looks like
No,
it was already
it-
part of the budget,
No, it is not.
so that's
It
not.
wasn't,
Say,
no.
I haven't seen it. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
I got it highlighted too, or underlined too. so
Yeah,
you're not
no,
alone.
that was my mistake. There's a
Oh.
lot of comments to read
Okay,
before these
all right,
go
I'm
out,
just
and I
asking.
missed it.
Just asking.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine having to.
How'd you
Each
miss
one-
that?
I know, each one's a manual update, so.
Okay, if we don't
Yeah,
have,
the numbers don't add up. If you add those 3 up, definitely more than $7,000.
okay, if there's
No,
nothing.
isn't that language for your 2015 number?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that language for the 2015 number?
It comes from the prior year, though, so I only have to make changes, so
And
it
also has
carries.
voter radio in there, and that wasn't prior year. That's why I thought all that language was 2015 combined.
Oh, that's right, voter radios.
It's got the voter system in
That's
there.
right.
Yeah, she just added it
I am
in
the
last
mobile,
year's
all of
comment.
them are in there. That's
Right.
They're all in
Yeah,
there.
it was, I probably added it
Just say
in
yes.
before the instruction to do maintenance only,
Yeah.
so, but yeah,
They're all in there.
it should have been
I
striked.
think
It
that's
is
the
not in the
language
budget.
from all of 15.
Yep.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next item?
Next budget is the fire department.
Oh, no, I mean,
Oh.
we still have, don't we have more PD
Animal
stuff?
Animal
control.
control.
Oh, okay.
communicate.
Yep, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Animal control, you're looking at a maintenance budget of $84,253. That's an increase of $11,888, primarily due to a shelter fee increase of $9,500 and a 2% COLA. 76% of the $84,000 maintenance budget is related to personnel costs, and the other portion is $12,000 for shelter fees. Looking at budget options to introduce a truck replacement program at a proposed cost of $8,000 for a 4-year loan purchase.
Lisa's fine.
I definitely think the shelter fees are something that we need to really, really look at and think about seriously. I don't think our current situation is ideal, thank you for the word,
You're welcome.
for our animals in our community. So I definitely think we need to strongly take a look at the shelter fees. But my only question with it, is that by per capita, or how do they come up with, or how do we come up with $9,500 for an increase?
It is, it's
Okay.
per capita.
And I believe you looked at both Lewiston, Auburn, and Brunswick? and
We
used-
did.
Used the lower number?
Well, I
No,
put both numbers are in the budget for information purposes.
you had given me both. The one you see is Lewiston, which was the higher per capita. So there's a potential for a small savings, but I wanted to go worst
Yeah.
case for you.
Is the Lewiston shelter closer?
They're about
There
the
it is.
same in
You're
terms
talking
of
about Andrewscoggin?
Yeah.
Androscoggin versus the
Postal.
coastal.
So,
Now,
go ahead.
One bonus to that would be the phone calls I get from people who want to turn in animals at Andrewscoggin. Because they'll actually take them now that we're paying.
Well, I mean, I think if people wanted to turn in animals to Androscoggin, he said we use Coastal, they wouldn't be averse to going to Coastal.
They have been, because we weren't paying them, they would not take any
Yeah, but
animals.
Coastal wouldn't either.
Yeah, same thing.
So it's the same
Well,
thing.
Coastal won't take them because we're a different town.
No, but they would be willing,
If we had a contract with either of the shelters, they would give us that full service,
Good.
both of them.
it costs us, how much per person? Approximately,
Um,
It's about $1 a person.
Yeah.
about $1 a person.
Yep.
I thought it was, no, I think it's more than that.
Yeah, if I ever find the right paperwork here.
A little over 9,000 people in town, and 9,500 is.
But that's the increase. We already
$1.29,
pay something now.
$1.29 at Coastal and $1.38 at Androscoggin.
Right,
What we
so it's
currently
about
pay?
30% more.
Yeah, what are we currently paying for a shelter?
3,000.
3,000, okay.
It was 129, what's the
Right,
other
so,
number?
Okay, yeah, that's
138.
Coastal's cheaper.
Coastal's 129.
yeah, and a lot of people prefer Coastal. I mean, I've been to both shelters and not seen anything that dismayed me, but it's been
I
great
didn't
to
ask
visit.
ACO to be here because I thought that would be at the next meeting for your public hearing, but I know ACO Cooper, I think if he had an option, his first choice would be Greater Androscoggin over Coastal.
The newer facility.
And,
They have more funding all around.
you know, you're talking 9 cents difference in the per capita cost between the two.
Right.
And the other thing with the Androscoggin shelter is, keep in mind that we provide ACO service to Sabattis, Bowden, and Durham. Sabattis already has a contract with Androscoggin, but then again, Durham and Bowden have a contract with Coastal. So it doesn't matter what we do, he's split. But the greater portion, if Lisbon went to Androscoggin, the largest percentage of his transports would be to Lewiston. And the other piece with the Lewiston side is that they have the emergency hospital right next door to it, where Coastal, they have a vet on staff, I believe, but it's only if she's there at the time when you get there, and after hours, there's nothing there. Where,
After
again,
hours, they
Lewiston,
say
you do.
Lewiston.
Yeah.
Right.
Both of these are, there's costs, there's potential for costs over and above what you see here, because this is just the per capita fee they charge to all municipalities. Doesn't matter if it's Lisbon or whoever, they all pay the same per capita rate. But you do end up being billed for, if we have to have an animal held for quarantine over a period of time, they bill for that, so much per day, where we don't have that problem now. There's just additional, and I understand the whole thought process here. You know, we want to get a service, a better service that, because it is difficult. You can't just pick up a stray and drop it off where we have now, because you don't take them. So you're kind of stuck. And you can't go to either Coastal or Androscoggin because we don't pay a fee, so they don't take them, so we're stuck again. But there is, if you do decide to go either or, just keep in mind that there's going to be additional fees at some point in time during this process. I can't tell you what they are because I haven't experienced it, because we don't have it with what we do now. But I do know we have had cases where we have had to keep an animal in quarantine for weeks and weeks. We've had cases where we've had to hold animals for weeks and weeks pending court proceedings. So if we get into that situation with one of these other shelters, that's so much per day, which is going to add to our cost. And again, don't ask me what it is. I don't know what it would be.
Do you think maybe the shelters can provide us with some of that information? I mean, they provide for other towns around our size.
You're right. They'll send us some, I'm sure, a summary of everything they provide and what the costs are. I'm sure they'll be glad to do that. I've seen some of this already, and they're almost mirrors of one another. They both charge.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter which way you go.
Now, Mr. Ford, right now, when our animal control is off or on vacation or whatever, does he covers for animal control for calls, is that correct? So if we didn't utilize his shelter going forward after July 1, would he still be open, do you think, to covering animal control when?
I haven't talked to him about that. What ACO Cooper and myself met with him just a couple of months ago, and during this budget preparation time, and to see what his future plan was, because some of us had heard that this could be his last year, even to operate his own shelter. But he made it clear to us that he intends to keep his shelter open. He is inspected by the state. The state approves it. It's not our call. But he intends to stay open for at least another full year. And he said that during that time, he would also provide the backup that he's been providing to us over that same period of time. Cooper and I have had discussion. We are looking at another individual right now to maybe step in to become our backup ACO. But again, there's a lot of training that has to be done, state requirements. It just never ends. But we have to move forward as well, so we will be.
agree.
We'll be looking for a backup, and you folks can decide on where the AC is going to go with the animals. All the costs are right there, what we know the upfront costs will be.
Definitely something I think we should move forward with.
We've talked about this at previous budget meetings, in previous years, and we knew it was coming down the pike, and I think that this may be the year that we need to take action before we lose opportunity. And I will say that I've heard from citizens who are concerned about animals and feel that the Lewiston Auburn, the Androscoggin Shelter, or the Coastal Humane Society would be better choices for our town too. So,
Well, they provide more for the citizen.
Right.
They provide more for the citizen. The ACO can take the animals, and both of these shelters give the ACO a key for after hours. They don't have to be open for the ACO to go and drop off an animal at either one of them. But for the public, they're the folks who don't. Either one of these shelters will give them far more service than what they're getting with the situation we have now. But it comes at a different cost.
For the truck replacement for the ACO is where we.
It's on your radar. That truck has 105,000 miles on it, and that's an 07. And it's heading in for springs in the rear first thing next week. But I've been told GMCs are good for that. I always thought it was just Fords with problems, but apparently springs on GMCs. They do.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, we had one this, it was just discovered today. I know.
Really?
Chief,
But-
can you add that to this list so we have all the vehicles on there?
Yeah, I've been looking for that, Greg. I thought sure I had the mileage on one of my notes here. I got note tabs everywhere, and I know I wrote the mileage down on all those cars, but I can't find it right now. But I'll get that out to you all.
Thank you.
With the
The GMC has 105,000 miles on it. I do remember that because it came up on maintenance today,
What year is it?
07. Also, the ACO, that is a revenue producer for us. We're looking at current year, that's $34,811 in revenue from the other towns that we service.
what was that number again?
34,811.
Do we have any other questions or?
Chief, for the 12 grand that we would have to pay, basically, for Androscoggin, is there any additional fee, other than if he had to put him in quarantine? There's additional fee per animal? I noticed up on line 5202, there was a $1,200 charge currently that we budget for per animal, which would go away, so that would reduce the cost.
Yeah, we pay the current shelter so much per animal, you're right. I don't think the other two shelters do that, but don't hold me to that right now.
I would hope not for.
I'll ask both of them for a summary of what they provide for that cost, and
Yeah,
get
I'd like
that
to know,
out to you.
because, I mean, if we're gonna take that out, it helps soften the blow.
That might be a great budget to leave in, budget line to leave intact for these unforeseen
case.
quarantine cases and
Well,
things like
that's
that.
a good point, too.
Won't make or break our
Not
mill
to,
rate.
you know,
We're getting- I know
not to
the
defer
charge-
against the reductions, but.
Council, all set to move forward?
I had one other question.
I'm just
He-
going to stop saying that.
That's our prompts, that's for our questions.
I know.
5133, the insurance line,
Mhm.
medical insurance, should that be in the insurance
No.
tab? Okay.
Only because we are reimbursed by
'cause
the
it's broken up.
communities.
Okay.
Yep, that's why you see all those benefit costs included in the ACO budget.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't mean to cut off your question.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I've got that yellow tab someplace.
All right, if we can take a look at Communications Center.
Communications has a total maintenance budget of $285,188. That's an increase of $11,883 over current budget. Impacts due to contractual step increases as well as a 2% COLA. 93% of the 285 is due to personnel costs, and we also have county tax fee of 18,018. We're looking at budget options to institute a capital reserve program of 20,000 so that we may start reserving for future replacement costs.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I don't know, a couple of years ago, was it maybe a year, 2 years ago, there was talks about maybe dispatching outside of Lisbon. And they did, you yourself did some kind of research on whether or not it was beneficial or not. I wasn't on the council at the time, but what come back on that when you looked into it? Was there a savings or no savings, or?
There's a lot of history there. Goes back quite a long time. As far as savings to Lisbon, there were so many plans that the LA 911 put out. Every time we had another meeting with LA 911, the numbers changed. And we produced, when I say we, let me back up here just to give you, this started studying communications in Androscoggin County began in 2004, 10 years ago. The county commissioners requested a study of communications in this county. And because everybody agreed something had to be done. Our equipment was getting old, the county's equipment was getting old, LA 911 was, nobody knew what was going on with them. So back in the fall of '04, they started the process and they hired a consultant company by the name of Allcom. They paid that company out of county funds, they paid that company $10,000, and the bottom recommendation from the company was that the process needed deeper study. So then in '05, the city of Lewiston took the reins on it, and They hired a company by the name of SSI Services out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in '05. And that company studied it, and at a cost of $60,000, and came up with, when they were all done, they came up with 6 different options. No firm choice, but 6 different options for everybody in Androscoggin County to look at. So at that time, or shortly thereafter, beginning in January of '07, the Androscoggin Combined Dispatch Study Committee was formed and chaired by the then Lewiston City Administrator. And also, it was co-chaired, and the Minot Selectman Fire Chief was also the co-chair. And that committee met for 2 years, and no final agreeable resolution was reached. Now, this started in '04, now we're into '08, and there's still nothing set yet. And let me check my notes. Then in '09, August of '09, the Androscoggin County Commissioners came to Lisbon and asked that I chair another committee, this time now the 3rd study committee on the same topic. And they picked, the county commissioners picked the participants on the committee. So
When did that communication center start here in Lisbon? What year was that?
Lisbon's been doing their own dispatching before I came here. I've only been here 40 years. We've had our own dispatch center all that time. So then in October of '09, the new committee began its work. And in April of 2010, the majority recommendation out of that committee, which at that time included the sheriff and the EMA director, was to bring the county comm center to Lisbon on a short-term basis until it could be decided again over whatever period of time it took to have a different type of consolidation, somehow bringing in LA. During 2 of these studies, during the end of the 2nd study, the City of Lewiston leadership told the committee at that time that they were going to advise their council to sue the county if they didn't come up with a plan. And then during the 3rd study, a county commissioner told that group that he was going to recommend to his constituents, which was the City of Auburn, to sue the county if they didn't come up with a plan. So the recommendation out of that committee was to bring the county comm center here. That budget that was developed, the county commissioners had been sitting on this for 7 years, and that budget was developed with the managers from Lisbon, Green, Sabattis, Mechanic Falls, Livermore Falls, all the small towns combined to work on that. And it brought a savings to the county tax base of, I don't know the exact number, it was over $200,000 if that was to come here. And as it turned out, it wasn't the plan the county commissioners apparently wanted to hear. And then towards the end of that plan, in 2000, okay, so that was 2011 when the managers came up with the budget. They came up with a budget, governance and everything in 6 weeks, and the commissioners had been on it for 7 years and hadn't done a thing. So then I applied for a Homeland Security grant. I applied for a Homeland Security grant around $160,000. And that would have been, and we got letters of support from all the communities in Androscoggin County except the City of Auburn. They didn't send us a letter. They didn't have a manager at the time. And they never never sent us a letter. And after all the letters were received, then Turner withdrew its letter. The commissioners would not approve it, would not support it. However, the commissioner did say that if the county budget committee wouldn't release their funds that they had in reserve, then they would send a letter of support for the grant. So now we're into December of 2011, and long story short, the commissioners torpedoed the whole thing. They asked for it. They started it in '04. They came to Lisbon and asked for our help. And then when all the towns got together and came up with a plan, they torpedoed it. And the night that they torpedoed that on December 14th, I think, of 11, doesn't matter, but anyway, the very next day, I got a call from MEMA in Augusta. They've been watching the show in Androscoggin County for years. And they said, look, they're basically tired of the whole thing down here. They gave me 72 hours to revise a Homeland Security grant. The town council at that time was unanimous in support of it. One of the councilors even made it clear that we need to be reaching out to our neighboring communities and helping them as well, because everybody was fed up with the county. So I rewrote the grant. We got a $96,000 grant. I think it was $96,000. I've got it here someplace. And with all my notes, $97,292. We were notified by MEMA in March of 2012 that they'd approved it in total, and basically got the green light to move forward. In 2012, we sat down with the town of Sabattis and Durham because they wanted us to do their dispatching for them. Green wanted us to do their dispatching for them. We started Green in March of 2013. Mechanic Falls wanted us to do our dispatching for them. We had to say no to Mechanic Falls because we would have had to add more full-time personnel in order to get the job done. See, we never added full-time personnel during this process. We added part-time people. We added 32 hours, part-time hours per week in order to get this whole project done. And we never added any additional full-time people to our.
So the revenue from one of those towns wouldn't cover an employee?
The revenue, the combined revenue for this fiscal year, the combined revenue between Sabattis, Durham, and Green is almost $62,700 for those towns. To bring in Mechanic Falls would have put us over the line where revenue would pay cost, because we would have had to have added additional full-time people to bring in mechanics. They're a busy little town. Their fire department's very busy. And we had to tell them we couldn't do it. Livermore Falls wanted to come here too, but then they got into another whole issue up their way because of where they are with Franklin County and so forth. They tried to secede from the county. That's how the politics played it up there. But so anyway, today we have the Regional Comm Center that has Sabattis, Lisbon, Durham, and Green in it, and we dispatch for Lisbon Emergency. I guess some of us thought we had a contract with Lisbon Emergency, but that hasn't come around yet. It is in your revenue budget, the funds we had anticipated from them. As the world turns, all things change. But our projected revenue for this fiscal year for the comm center was just short of $70,000. But that was anticipating the Lisbon Emergency piece at the time. So, and all the communities have paid up. Everybody's paid up through their quarters. We do it quarterly. Nobody's lagging on this. So by the end of the fiscal year, we'll have nearly $63,000 in revenue from those three towns. And again, this whole plan was supported wholeheartedly by the council at that time. I mean, it was unanimous. Some of the concerns, well, the biggest concern is that LA is still a player in all this mix. And the LA budget for their comm center at the time of this was $2 million. And they share that 50-50 between the cities of Lewiston and Auburn. Well, Auburn squawks because they don't get 50% of the workload, and Lewiston smiles
Are
because
they
get far more.
dispatching just there? They don't dispatch
Exactly.
anywhere else? What about
Yeah.
Brunswick?
And Brunswick.
Does Brunswick have a comp center there?
Brunswick has their comm center, and they dispatch Brunswick and Freeport. The concern in Androscoggin County, staying on Androscoggin County, is that this will come up again. No doubt in my mind, knowing the politics in Androscoggin County, this will come up again, because LA wants to get rid of their $2 million budget and make everybody in the county pay for it. And that was one of the biggest concerns about all the small towns, that they didn't want us to get stuck with LA's budget for communications. And that's why people were staying separate at the time. We now have that MEMA grant, it's a FEMA, Homeland Security grant, and that grant has a, basically call it a life expectancy on it. It expires, it's a 2011 grant that the grant period expires in August of this year, 2014. And we are locked basically into that plan for 3 years. So through August of 2017, we are locked into that grant funding. If at some point in time, for whatever reason, politics changed and it was decided that you were going to close the Lisbon Comm Center, then you would likely be into FEMA for the depreciated value of the equipment that was purchased for that comm center. So, can't begin to tell you what those numbers would be, but there's a payback there. But again, I know I sat in almost every single one of those meetings for 10 years. And you or any counselor is more than willing to come, more than able to, doors open, give me a call. I can really give you a lot of history on this. I've got notebooks and reports that were written, and I've got more stuff. And but it's coming back. There's no question in my mind. It will be back. They were waiting for the new commissioners board. Right now it's 3, and you couldn't get anything done with that board of 3. And, now they're going to 7, I believe.
7 and a manager.
Yeah, and the message was delivered from the cities to the small towns that they would likely be back on this topic again when there were 7 commissioners and they had 4 of them. So there's no doubt in my mind, if not while I'm here, but at some point in time down the road, this will be a hot button again. Because there's no doubt in my mind, LA wants all the small towns to help pay their $2+ million operating budget.
Now, is Brunswick ever an option, or no? Is that ever considered?
Brunswick was never discussed because everything was county. Everything was based on counties. It's just the way everything works.
Yep.
Everything's based on counties. When we were discussing having the county comm center here, we even talked with Somerset County to do our PSAP, because anybody can do PSAP. Again, don't confuse PSAP, E911, with comm center. Some have both, some don't, okay? But anybody, the state of Maine could get off with 1 PSAP for the entire state. But we have to have, I don't know how many, a lot, 20 some odd. Used to be 50, and then they cut it down to 20 some odd. And we could get away with 1 or 2. But, so bottom line is, the concern is that with the past council and my concern and others who sat through it with all the small towns, the concern is that if anybody who goes to county, at some point in time, county's going to be either absorb LA or vice versa, and then you've got LA's bill that you have to absorb with it. So that's,
Yep, I understand that.
concern. Right now, we're doing well. We've got the grant. We've got a 3-year obligation with the grant, so I would really like to see it just, let's get through the grant and see what the county commissioners do when that new board is put together, because I guarantee it will come up again.
Has the county charter already been changed to expand the board from 3 to 7?
Yes. Yeah, the elections will be this November.
So this November, they'll be picking the 4 new commissioners, and then they intend to hire a county manager. So you're suggesting that that could happen fairly rapidly? This
That will happen as rapidly as LA wants to push the buttons, because they're the ones who feel they're in control of everything.
Sure.
Depends on who runs for commissioner.
Well, still, they'll have the majority vote.
And the one friendly commissioner we have is not running for re-election.
So there'll be at least 5 of 7 new ones.
But that's a
Who's that?
15-minute synopsis of 10 years of history. But
Appreciate
again,
that.
come
I'm just-
visit me and I'll show you the
No, it's
reports.
Elaine
And
Mackis.
I mean,
you've
just to
been on the
share,
board for a
and I
big
can
part
do-
of that whole
Yes,
history,
I was,
too.
yes, I remember that.
I can share in 2 minutes what happened in Cumberland County. It didn't take nearly as long, but Cumberland County wanted to be the host dispatch center for the entire county. And so all the towns in Cumberland County started to weigh their options. And it lasted about 3 years. At the end of the day, I would say half of the towns in Cumberland County went to county dispatch. Falmouth ended up with a dispatch center that hosts, I believe, Cumberland and Yarmouth.
Falmouth has a comm center.
Right. And then Brunswick, Freeport looked at its options. We could have gone to county, to Falmouth, to Brunswick, and we chose Brunswick. The council's decision led to a year-long lawsuit, which cost the town about $50,000. But the council's decision was finally upheld, and in Freeport, the merger with Brunswick saved the town about $110 a year. Now, I looked at the numbers here and sort of plugged in Freeport's model into your numbers, and the savings wouldn't be nearly as great because of the revenue stream that's produced. Durham, we were dispatching for Durham, and obviously when we merged with Brunswick, Durham had a decision to make. Do they go to Brunswick? Do they come here? I think Pownell ended up going with Brunswick. Durham came here. So,
Originally, Durham was with the county.
oh, they were.
Yeah, and they
So they
left
went
the county.
county,
Everybody
then-
that came to Lisbon was with Androscoggin County. They left the county and came to Lisbon. All 3 towns.
Now, I mean, whether the model I plugged in to just see what the numbers looked like, and this was a month or so ago, whether that model would work here, I have no idea. But if you think the process is probably going to unfold when they restructure county government, maybe that's your best bet, is to wait to see what happens there before you stick your toe in the water.
And again, the small towns, all the small towns, though they won't have the political clout, they'll stand up against LA because that's the history. And LA's expensive. Again, we showed the county, we gave the county a plan that was gonna save the county taxes over $200,000, and they turned their back to it. And that really irritated, Green went ballistic, but that really irritated some of the small towns. And like I said, we could have, if we'd had the capability, we'd probably have 2 other towns here as well than what we have now. We just didn't have the capability without adding to our cost, which wouldn't have made a lot of sense to do.
Elaine.
No, I did, this doesn't probably fit into anything, but, like the town and the school, you dispatch for them for no charge at all, right?
Well, we monitor their frequencies, and if they have issues, they can go through our comm center. Yeah, yeah. And that was some of the other problems with the consolidation at the time. There were no plans at either the county or LA to deal with, they were only going to deal with police and fire. They weren't going to deal with public works, and they weren't going to deal with any of the other agencies. They weren't going to deal with the school. That was still going to have to be the town's. The town was going to have to come up with a way of monitoring that. It wasn't an all or nothing.
So what does Freeport do with their school?
Brunswick agreed to monitor or dispatch for
Oh, I
schools
see.
in town, and Brunswick does it all. It's full service.
So now my understanding is that the county could basically force our hand if they decided to take over LA 911 and then just, you know, bill it to us in the county tax. We wouldn't have any option, even if we wanted to go somewhere else, say to Brunswick or keep it ourselves, we'd still have to pay for.
If LA 911 becomes a county operation,
We'd
your
be
county
forced to do
taxes
that
are
through
going to
county
go up.
taxes, even if we don't use it. And that's-
Just,
so we
that's,
can
I'm
force
just
our
the
hand there.
messenger.
Yeah.
That's the, there's no doubt in my mind, that's LA's goal is
If we
to,
say we decided we want to close it down and, you know, contract with Brunswick to run it, and then, you know, LA 911.
you'll still
take over by
have,
the
you'll
county,
still
and
have
they
the
decide to
county,
bill
you'll
us
still have
for
the
it, and
county
we're not
free to
using it.
pay.
All right.
Chief, are all your dispatchers police officers?
No, no. None of my full-time dispatchers are police officers.
I don't think so, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
How many part-time employees versus full-time employees do you have?
In the comm center?
Yeah.
6 or 7 part-time dispatchers now. We finally got that number up to where we can fill open slots. Very good. We have 4 full-time dispatchers. We tried 3 years ago now. We had a dispatch opening that came up, and we didn't fill it. And with full-time, we just filled the hours with part-time. And the local unit was okay with it, but the mother union heard about it and filed a grievance, and we lost, I guess, and or at least we were advised by council that we had to, because of the way the contract was written, we had to keep those hours at full-time, so we had to fill that position back to full-time. But this was, goodness, I think this was 3 years ago now. Yep. So we maintained 4 full-time, and the rest are all part-time. And those part-timers, again, that's 40 hours a week that those part-timers share, anywhere from 6-hour shifts to 8-hour shifts. We have 2 dispatchers setting the consoles on Fridays and Saturdays, and day shift on Sundays.
Is it possible for the county to take over our dispatch? Would we be able to, you know, go to them and say, you know, do our dispatching for us and charge us a fee? Is that an option?
The county right now doesn't have the capability of taking over what Lisbon does. The equipment that we spec'd and got with our grant, the county turned around and used the exact same specs. They're using the exact same equipment, 20-channel radios. So they don't have the capability to expand right now to take on Lisbon, or everybody that Lisbon provides dispatching for. And the other problem with the county is that they didn't have the physical capabilities to take it all on. We had the physical capability. That was one of the arguments with this whole thing, is that our comm center, back when this building was built in 2000, had the ability to go from a 2-position to a 4-position comm center. It's already structurally set up for that, and the county didn't even have that. And again, like I said, you know, I sound like a broken record here, but you know, the recommendation was for the county dispatch to come here, and the county commissioners turned a blind eye to it. They kept their own, and they kept it up there. So, could they take on Lisbon today? No, they could not.
Are they mandated to under the county charter? I know they give some town service. Do we force them to, or?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Are they mandated to if we demanded it as a service?
Well, that would be an interesting argument.
I would like to know what would
That would
pay
be an
5
interesting
points.
argument, because
I would-
Lewis and Auburn has threatened the same argument, but they can't provide it. They don't have the capability of doing it. I mean, you can throw it at them, but they don't have the
It's
capability
just the
of
argument that's
providing
been
it.
made to me is, you know, we could
Well,
force
now
them
what
to do
about
it.
Brunswick? Are they capable of doing it or no?
Brunswick isn't
And they
capable
don't.
of doing it right now. They don't have the equipment for that. I don't believe they have the equipment for that. I was asked about if Brunswick could do it today. Right now, I don't think anybody could just take us on today. They need to, you know, they gotta look at the, well, our call, you know, we're talking over 13,000 calls for service that go through the comm center. Nobody's just gonna say, oh yeah, we can take that on and not add anything to what we have now. Can't do it. You know, we've got 20 channel pieces of equipment over there.
My mother-in-law can talk with 2 phones.
And probably 2 separate conversations both at the same time.
Exactly.
We are being recorded, just so you know.
Yep.
How, for our neighbor
don't
communities,
watch.
Green, Durham, Sabatis, the contracts we have with them, are they renewed annually, or how does that work?
I think we have 3-year contracts with them.
3 year?
Yeah, and that started January 1st of 13.
So, are there any clauses in that contract that state if we end dispatching service, we have to do this, or how, do you have any idea how that would play out?
I don't. The advisory board for the towns met in, one of the requirements is that there be a communications advisory board with all the towns having membership on it, and everybody has one vote, and they understand it's advisory. They know that the town council Lisbon Town Council has final say on the budget. But they had to meet, I had to meet with them in January because 1 or 2 of those towns are on a calendar year budget. So they had to kind of get a handle as to what was going on with the budgets real quick. And I think the shared budget for communications, the total budget for communications is about a 4% increase. And they were all okay with that. They voted 3-0-1. The 4 managers that were present voted 3-0-1, and the abstention at that time was Mike Houston, because he was new to the whole process, so he just abstained from it. But Sabatis, Green, and Durham, they all voted in support of this budget that you see here tonight.
Would their contract, do their fees go up on an annual basis?
That percentage, yeah.
So 4%, just this year, could be more next year, or is it 4%?
No, the way the contracts were written is that the first year was open, and then the second and third year guaranteed no more than 3% increases. And we were comfortable, Lisbon was pretty comfortable with that, knowing the history of contract negotiations, and most, 99% of the equipment in there is brand new, so we weren't looking at large capital expenses for any new equipment.
So we talk about the $90-something thousand FEMA grant that we received for the equipment.
Mhm.
How long is that equipment expected to perform?
Well, that equipment will perform beyond the grant period.
Will that equipment perform 10 years or 20 years?
That equipment, when radio people are selling us that equipment, they're telling us that's a 10-year cycle now. Will it last longer? Probably. I honestly don't know.
Well, the
However,
technology may give out before the equipment does.
It could be. But our mobiles are going on 8 to 9 years now, and I've got one at Motorola shop. I mean, the Motorola, not the little main shops, but it's at Motorola. I don't know what good that is, but they fixed it, and we had to send it back because they didn't fix it right. But we're seeing problems, and again, it's because it's used 24/7. It's not something that's, shut it off for 12 hours a day.
That brings me to the $20,000 budget option for the capital reserve. So that would be something that we can make a wand, have 20,000 set aside to replace
That
that.
again is to plant the seed that we need to start thinking beyond today, and that grants are not out there the way they were. We're not going to be seeing, the year that we got that full FEMA funding was the last year that Homeland Security did full funding on grants. That was the last year. That was our last best chance to get full funding, and we got it.
How much was that whole project over there altogether? Do you have to put in additional money than the FEMA grant?
Homeland Security, I go back and forth, FEMA, Homeland Security, same grant. That's $97,000 on that piece. We've got 30-some odd thousand combined on the Hill.
On the hill, yeah. Up to the repeater, secondary
through the
grant that
repeater
I wrote
system?
the year after was to be able to get
Yeah.
the repeater.
So you're talking,
120,000.
yeah, 120 plus thousand there.
And then, but was there any additional money from the town that had to be put into this pool to make it all work?
That
What
was,
is-
that
what did
was
that cover?
all Homeland Security funding.
I think you put in a little bit for furniture.
I'm sorry?
Put a little bit for furniture in there, didn't you, something like that? I saw in the budget.
I'd have to look again, but most everything was FEMA funded. I'd have to look at all that again, but you got me on that, I don't remember that.
I think it was something.
Yeah, 2013.
I don't want to cut you short, but you've given us a lot of food for thought and a lot of good information, Chief. But I know that Chief Gallipo has a presentation
No, he's all
also.
set. The, going back to
Still
the
awake.
capital piece, though, there is a piece there at some point in time, as we have with the fire department. We got to think ahead as well on capital reserves.
We're finally building your capital reserve.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Do me a favor, find out who brings in that.
Yeah, I'm
These chairs.
kind of curious about that myself.
I mean, push
I might just,
more than I
Pull the
already
chair
have.
from under David.
Well, it's already got the appointment,
well,
so.
I know, but you know, it's, kinda wanna know what.
Ready to move on to the next item?
Yes, fire department budget presentation.
So the fire department has a total maintenance budget of $359,857. It's an increase of $9,469 over current year, due to lease purchase adjustment of $5,600 and 2% COLA increase. 60% of this budget is personnel costs. We have $50,000 in capital reserves, as well as the Air Pack lease purchase agreement of $28,600. We're looking at budget options to increase the reserve or truck replacement program by $25,000. We're requesting equipment of $5,500. The second half of the public safety voter radio system to the tune of $5,200. And some of that partially offset by the proposed annual fundraiser donation letter.
It's not in there.
I see that.
That'll be a discussion to come when the new town manager arrives, I'm sure.
Was there anything you wanted to
Yet
add to
again.
Jessica's
Save it for the
presentation?
Jessica pretty much had it in there. As I stated when I did my presentation to you, basically about the full department, in the 12 years, it's been a minimal, increase of 4% or 3% for the 12 years that I've been chief, and I'm trying to stay definitely within that same idea. The big one that we took a big bite out of was the SCBA purchase program that we implemented last year, and that's going to be for the next few years, or the next years that we have to pay for that. Was no impact to the budget. That was last year's approval. So this year, really, we're looking at minuscule type equipment costs for actually moving forward, or as our options, along with the voter system, our side of the voter system, with the PD, so.
The equipment you were looking at was the K-Saw?
K-Saw, low-level strainer, and some Mark III forestry pumps. The Mark III forestry pumps I've just had serviced, they were told that the next time we have those serviced, it might not happen. They're about 35, almost 40 years old. So they're just, you know, they're good workhorses, but they're just getting to the point that if we have to fix them again, they are getting to the point where they're almost ancient, and, you know, so. And another thing that's gonna be on the hit list coming up again is thermal imaging cameras. We do have 3 thermal imaging cameras. I am replacing one right now on an insurance claim because it did break. Sent that out, that ended up being 14 years old. And that's old technology, they're not doing that, so Scott's saying that they're not gonna replace that, but luckily it happened on a fire scene, so our insurance company's gonna most likely be able to replace that, so that's one of 3, but there's still 2 more that are gonna be coming up here in time. That's not on your hit list, that's just on the radar, as Chief Brooks is kinda saying that we're gonna come up later.
The insurance is buying a new one, an upgraded one from what you had?
They're actually, right now, from what I talked with the insurance company, that we're gonna be able to actually replace that one on the insurance.
Really? With no extra cost?
Correct.
Nice.
Good insurance.
Yes.
And that's the difference with all of our equipment on the fire station, all the equipment on the truck is insured in the fire department, as the public works discussion you guys had is.
What we found out is that you can't actually get the replacement cost insurance for the
It's only
plow
provided for
trucks.
emergency.
Nobody-
Only provided for emergency, yeah.
Right. They
Emergency.
just assume those plow trucks get beaten up so much over time, nobody wants to insure them.
So really, like we said, just the minuscule equipment is what we're really trying, the voters are what I'm kind of shooting for, with a minimal increase.
I was, one,
Except for the truck replacement program, which of course we have to talk about every year. So. Sorry.
I was wondering about line 5150. I know that you've been keeping up with physicals, and I didn't know, did you have more than you expected this year? Or I was just wondering if $5,000 is adequate.
I can say that next year, I'm in hopes that $5,000 will not be adequate, only for the fact that we are doing a membership drive. Our numbers are low, and we're gearing up for a big membership drive right now, that you're gonna see basically us all over town, or applications all over the town, to try to get our numbers back up, so that we're able to be able to be at a stronger workforce. So that's been hit or miss. That's been an even number right there that we've kind of kept standard there. Sometimes, you know, we've had hiring times where we actually hire 10, and I've kept 2 of those individuals, only because of the time constraint, and everybody, you know, life is busy for everybody, and to put in the time is definitely it's a hard sell.
What about 5120, the mileage line? Who is that for? Is that for your officers?
That's typically for training. We usually have a group that goes down to National Fire Academy, and we rent a van to travel down there for that, and that's typically the training reimbursement for that.
And then my other one was 5121, the professional development. I'm a little confused on the numbers for that.
There's an increase in that one because that was a part of, we're starting a first responder program, a possible revenue source,
There's not an increase on my sheet.
last year.
Oh, okay, last
We're
year.
at 10,000 this year, that typically wasn't at that, but first responder, we're looking at we're starting to roll out with EMS on critical calls to supplement Lisbon Emergency, as a better taxpayer investment and on the fire department side and helping out. That's that is a potential revenue source once we get to, right now we're at first responder level. Once we get to EMT or paramedic level, then we'll be having a whole nother discussion on the EMS side of the house. But training for that is over $500 a person. So trying to get people up. And originally, when that happened two years ago, we got a Stephen King grant of like $8,000, and they bought all of our equipment for that. And part of the agreement with that was that we would be training individuals, and we were able to do that. And that class is going on right now for that.
So you have more people that are going through this training?
Correct.
So you have $10,000 budgeted for this year. You've expended less than $2,000, but you expect to get close to that 10 by the end of this year.
Right.
Okay, that was my.
One other question I had was
We also have people in the Tri-County Firefighter One program right now also.
Okay.
5160, the capital project reserves.
Yes.
So our budget for that was 207,000, but we've put in 20,000. Is that a typo or?
Which line, I'm sorry?
5460, page 39, I don't know if it's different
It's
for
the
you.
truck replacement program?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if there's a typo or if we're really putting 207,000 and we haven't got there yet.
No, we're at 207,000, and we notoriously every year undercut that. It's been at 50 every year.
This budget, what you see in that line is what's carried forward every year.
Okay.
Right.
So that's not what we look to budget, that's what's carried forward as
That's
a
why I was
balance
confused.
as we use it,
That's the
yeah.
truck
Okay.
replacement
Yep.
program for refurbishment.
Currently, what you need to look at is the 2015 column for that. That's what we budget every year. The historic amounts are what's been carried forward. They include those budget adjustments of what we carried forward. So,
When you have to go and expend for a new fire truck, do you foresee the capital reserve fund being adequate?
No.
No. Okay. So,
Tell us again how much a fire truck costs.
The last two we bought, and we're getting out of buying two fire trucks at the same time. The last two that we bought 10 years ago now were $1.3 million. So now, when we replace the ladder truck, when that comes time to replace the ladder truck in 2025, I hope, we're looking at about $1 million for one truck. So you're looking at a strong 500,000 for an engine. So what we had done originally when that plan was developed, that the interest rate and everything else was in there, and we forecasted what refurbs were gonna cost and everything else, the amounts that were put in there were, we were supposed to be at 100,000 like last year or the year before, that we were supposed to be, to catch up. That hasn't happened. We've only put in, and since 2004, I can only say that we've probably only put in one. I don't think we financed that from day one completely what the numbers were on them that I had actually put on the plan. The advantage of that is that we, as far as refurbs are concerned, haven't spent the refurb money, or the monies haven't been as expensive as we expected for the refurbs. So we've been kind of making up a little bit there. But when it comes time to replace engine 7, which is a full truck purchase, we're gonna be really close. We're gonna be starting from scratch if we absorb all the money in that program. Then we're gonna be starting from scratch all over again.
What happens to these trucks when you retire them?
We've sold them outright before to other, we had, the old engine 4 we had, which is a Ford F8000, basically. That went to, a guy in Durham, and he took the body off it, and it's a dump truck now. But that was a different style truck. Now, a custom fire truck, or a truck that's built to be a fire truck, a little bit different story. Farms will take them sometimes and use them for watering, crops or whatever.
Right.
If you go out to Richmond, when you're driving out to Richmond, and just as you go over the bridge, there's a farm right there. There's a yellow engine 1 is sitting there, and that's where they parked it when I delivered it, and it hasn't moved. So it's been there. I don't know if they're using it as a planter or what the thing, but it's been sitting there the whole time. So we usually don't get all that much for them. Now, the way the fire trucks are built now and the way they've been refurbed, the upkeep on them has been pretty good. We may be able to offload those on, Bowden Fire took our old engine 6, and it may still be able to be used. But to what aspect, I don't know. We started building fire trucks with better materials, right, that didn't rust. We started using stainless steel and aluminum, and then all of a sudden they start using calcium on the road, and that affects aluminum and stainless steel. So it seems like we can't win when it comes time to, we finally get ahead of something. And trucks are all electronic now. So wiring harnesses and everything else are an issue, so.
for that 5410 equipment line for the saw we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
that equipment you have there, do you think it's going to make it through the year, or should we What do you think?
I believe it will. I mean, it's been used and maintaining it. It's like anything, and with time, you're not gonna, you're gonna have to replace it at some point. And that's what we're at the point that we are right now. And we're fortunate enough over the last 12 years that we've addressed a lot of our equipment issues so that I could spearhead the SCBA program and be able to do that without a major tax increase to the tax. And now that we can just start hitting the smaller stuff, and be able to do that type of stuff, so.
I have one last question on wages, just because I noticed on that line that there was a pretty big difference between the budget and year-to-date. Will we get closer to that budget number?
This year's budget is gonna be, most likely the last year that you're gonna see me hand wages back. We're changing the way that the fire department's paid this upcoming year.
Really?
They're going to a point system.
What's that mean?
That means that we're just gonna use the money that's allotted there in a different way. That's all that basically means. Right now, everybody has a base stipend, and they get a check every quarter, and then it's figured for the calls that they miss. What we're gonna do now is the time that if you put in more hours, you're gonna get paid for those hours or those points for the time that you put in, compared to the guy who doesn't put in as much time as you do. Right now, a guy who does the bare minimum of 30% of what I ask is getting the same amount of a guy who's putting in 110 hours a week over there. So we're looking at trying to make it more fair. It has no effect on the budget whatsoever. It's just that
So you're moving to an incentive-based system.
we're moving finally to an incentive
Yeah.
base,
That's good.
which has been a long time in the making. Not that those 110 guys are those guys that are definitely getting everything done, and everybody needs those. But you also need the people that are making the 30%.
Right.
And that are doing the minimum, that are there because, they're raising kids, or they've got 2 jobs or whatever. But, of course, the personality differences, everybody has those, and it's hard for that 110% guy not to be, he can't hold the 30% guy responsible for his 110%. He's doing what he needs to do. So this should alleviate that. People are gonna get paid for what they're at. So it's just divvying up the money a little bit differently.
Okay, great. And of course, we're going to have more firemen, because you're having a drive.
And we're gonna have more firefighters. Correct.
Firefighters, that's exactly
Because we
right.
have female firefighters.
Firefighters. All right. Does anyone have any more questions for the chief? Are you sure? Okay. All right, thank you, chief.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to adjourn, but we've traditionally, in the past few months, asked if there's any input from, any questions or comments that would be helpful to council on these budgets, if anyone from the audience has anything to say.
We're Erin and Carrie and Martel, we're residents here in Lisbon, and we just wanted to share a story about the animal control and the animal kennel facility that we have here in Lisbon right now. We recently adopted pretty much a dog that was brought over to Mr. Ford's facility, and we just wanted to show you these photos that the conditions in there were deplorable. The dog that we adopted was laying in at least 7 days worth of his own fecal matter. His water bowl was frozen solid. I'm sorry I'm shaking because we're animal lovers, and it really touched us to see him in these conditions. And if my animal were ever to be brought there, I would be very upset. I want to encourage you guys to at least try to find another facility. Mr. Ford is an elderly gentleman. The one time that we had contact with him, he's 79 years come up in February. One of the entrances to the kennel was frozen solid, we couldn't get in. We had to basically go through Mr. Ford's garage, filled with all his personal belongings. We had this much space to walk through to get to a kennel that was covered in pine, what do they call it? Wood shavings down, bedding. It was really cold in there. It was 21 degrees at its highest that day and that week as well. Mr. Ford had a heater, an electric heater, blowing into the kennel, which isn't very safe. Fire hazard, obviously, with the wood shavings. One entrance to the building. The dog had been unattended for several days because the water was frozen, and Mr. Ford didn't even know when I spoke to him whether the dog was male or female. He hadn't even been out to that kennel area to even see the dog. So I have photos if you'd like to see, but I just wanted to share my personal story. I'm also told that somebody on the council received many letters from the facility. This is an animal that Dylan actually found, and this is how I got in touch with this. I didn't even know this facility was even here. I've been in this town for many years. I didn't even know this facility existed.
I was raised here, and I didn't know it.
I didn't know it existed. But thank goodness for Dylan for posting the animal's picture on Facebook. We were able to see it. You know, Dylan tried to find the owners, and the owners weren't found. And then when we started reading the stories about, oh my gosh, this dog was where? We heard all these stories. We're like, we have to go. We have to go get him. We have 3 golden retrievers now and a little Yorkshire Terrier. So we are dog lovers, and to be able to see an animal in a facility like that, most people save animals for facilities like that. We don't bring them there. So if you guys want to see our pictures, I'm more than willing to pass them around to you. So maybe that will.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
I am a little over prepared.
It's
I
okay.
just wanted to show you this. This is a family picture of us and our other dogs. This is the facility that he was in, where he had the wood shavings. There was a tiny little area for him to lay down here that had no fecal matter in it. I apologize for the disgusting photos, but same thing inside the little dog house he had. There's the frozen water bowl, which in my eyes and in the eyes of the animal welfare, the state of Maine animal welfare, this is cruelty to animals. So I'll let you guys pass them around if you want to see them. That is Bandit. We call him Bandit because he stole our hearts after we heard his story. We took him to the vet immediately after picking him up from Mr. Ford's clinic. He was severely malnourished. Again, I know this didn't happen at Mr. Ford's clinic, at Mr. Ford's kennel. However, if Mr. Ford had seen this dog in that condition, the dog should have been brought somewhere else.
Should have been brought for
Medical care.
He had severe ear mites in both ears. Matter of fact, I'm still treating him for that.
And it's 6 weeks later.
One side is cleared up, the other side is just about there.
He had a severe skin condition too. Dylan noted in his contact with Bandit that Dylan gave him a bath and he had skin and fur falling off of him that night when Dylan gave him a bath. We noticed the same thing with that. We treated him. He's got special medicated shampoo and all that now. But again, we just wanted to share our story with you guys. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for taking the opportunity to talk to us and let us know. And I know that I spoke with a couple of folks by phone also, and we appreciate your input. It's always important for us to find out firsthand when citizens are unhappy with certain conditions, and this is certainly one that we need to take a look at. As you know, considering a new animal shelter is on our in our budget this year, and we hope that we'll be moving that forward. So thank you for that input. And I know it's not easy if you haven't talked in front of council before. It's okay. Is there anybody else who has anything they need to ask or add for us? Okay, great. I will ask you what's next on the agenda, Twyla.
Order to adjourn.
Do we have a motion to
Make
adjourn?
the motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order pass.
Thank you.
Want another dog? I've got a foster dog.
Nope.
Is there actually a limit? I'm in trouble. Well, let's see, over the weekend, let's see, with foster dog and when we were babysitting, oh no, wait, we got rid of
This is
something.
a,